The republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Isn't that awesome to hear so many people come together and cite the Pledge of Allegiance? We are ready for the Treasurer's report. Superintendent?
Yes, I make a recommendation to approve the Treasurer's report. Ms. Anderson will come, before I do that, Ms. Anderson will come forward and share that with the board.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Treasurer's report begins on page 1. It is for the activity of the month of August 2021. Our beginning balances in cash were $43,978,000.
Ms. Anderson, I'm not sure everybody can hear you. Can you move that mic a little bit closer?
All right, how's that? Is that better? All right. So our beginning balances are $43,978,000, and our ending balances are $40,620,000. At this time of year, our disbursements are still outpacing our receipts, so that is standard for this time period. As we look to the next section, under the bonded construction fund, you can see that we have a little bit of revenue coming in, but not too much. This is largely interest. And so our beginning balance is just $11,000 higher. On the following page, you can see the governmental cash of $35,203,000, and that is divided into each of the individual cash funds. On the following page, we have our historical analysis comparing the different years. On our first line, we've got our general fund revenue. You can see in fiscal 22, we are pretty flat to what we were compared to fiscal 21, and we are down from fiscal 19 and up from fiscal 20. The following line item, we've got general fund salaries and benefits. We are up just about 2% overall from prior year. In the next section, we've got some of the individual general revenue accounts. Our first one, we're showing no revenue for property tax or franchise tax, and that is expected at this time of year. Our delinquent property taxes continue to be up slightly. Our motor vehicles are flat to down, as well as our utility taxes. In our SEEK program, you can see that we have a very slight increase there, about 2.7% on that. Capital outlay in the next section is exactly where we had anticipated at this time. In the next section, building revenue fund, we have zero property tax at this time, which is expected, and we are showing some revenue coming in for the 320 account. On the following page, you can see the individual revenue accounts. The total back to that $8.2 million that we saw on the previous page. On page 6, we have the historical comparisons of the expenses by category. So again, you can see in our salary section, $4.5 million, almost 4.6 is flat compared to where we are right now. But if you look in the benefit section, you can see that we've got an 11% increase, and that is largely due to the CERS, which has increased by 12% this year. So that one line item went from $310,000 to $378,000. If we turn the page, we're seeing some increases in our property services. We've got our daycares open, so we've got folks using water. It's again very hot, so that increases that as well. Other purchase services are relatively flat. And then when we get to some of the supplies, again, you're seeing our electricity costs are back up. Same reason, we got buildings full, we got daycares busy, so that's all good things. We are seeing quite an increase. Really, we've doubled from where we were 3 years ago. So most of that is in software and other computer devices. And let's see, on page 14, we've got the comparison by function. This just shows those same expenses in a slightly different manner. And on page 17, we do have a new report here. This is the summary of bonding potential provided by our financial advisor. And this has increased considerably due to some changes in their calculations standard for this time of year.
Yes.
And then on page 19, we've got our balance sheets by fund. And on page 33, we have our income statements by fund. And that concludes the treasurer's report.
Excellent. Questions or comments, board members, on the treasurer's report? So I need a motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Kehoe and seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Would you lead us through bills and claims, please?
Yes, on page 91 are bills and claims. We have 1,920 invoices this month for a total of $6,878,000. Same time last year, we had $7 million of claims, so just timing issues on that. And behind that is the detail supporting all the expenses that we paid this month.
Yes.
And that concludes bills and claims.
It's a very detailed report, and we appreciate that. Any questions or comments? Motion to approve bills and claims, please. Made by Ms. Nykirk and seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Board members, we have 5 sets of minutes to approve. The first are the minutes from the August 23rd regular board meeting. Any corrections or additions? Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. We have minutes from the August 25th special called session, and I need a motion to approve if there are no questions. Made by Mr. Kehoe, seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Next set of minutes are September 9th, the special called meeting. Corrections or additions? Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Kehoe and seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. September 13th was a board work session. Corrections, additions? Motion to approve. Made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Last set of minutes, September 16th was a special called work session. Corrections, additions? Motion to approve. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. You were busy this last month, board members. Superintendent, we are ready for the notice to the Board of Personnel Actions, sir.
Yes, so in your packet, you'll see a notice of personnel actions for your review.
Yes. Questions or comments? I would like for everybody to welcome our newest school board member to the seat for Division 4, Miss Andrea Nykirk. Join me in welcoming her. Welcome, Miss Nykirk. All right, we are ready for the consent agenda, I believe. And we have items A through H. Your recommendation, Superintendent?
Recommend to approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Superintendent, we are ready for report number 1, sir.
Sure, I'd like to invite Mr. Williams to come, or Mr. Deves to come forward, and Mr. Williams to come forward and share the report on the 1-month enrollment report for this current school year.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Mr. Williams.
Welcome, Mr. Williams.
Welcome, Mrs. Fletcher. How are you doing this evening?
Great.
As you can see in your month 1 enrollment report, we had 487 fewer students than we did in the 1920 school year. I had to go back to the 1920 school year to actually have a first month to compare to a first month.
Yes, sir.
When you look at the overall numbers, we see a decrease in student enrollment by 3.88%, and that the accuracy of projections at this point was 99.74%, with 32 fewer students enrolled than were projected. We did see decreases across all the levels of elementary, middle, and high school. We are seeing quite a few students leave for homeschool. We're continuing to see that change. And these numbers will be used.
I'm going to ask everybody to please not interrupt the speaker at the podium. Thank you.
These numbers will then be used to do our projections for next school year. And I am more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Superintendent, we are ready for report 2, sir.
Yes, Mr. Williams, if you could grab Mr. Deves, please. Mr. Deves is going to come forward and give a report about the substitute teacher incentive program. And the purpose of that is, as you will hear, is to help support our classrooms and our teachers in terms of vacancies that we have on a daily basis. So in just one moment, I think Mr. Deves will be coming forward.
Excellent, thank you, sir. Good afternoon and welcome, Mr. Deves.
Good afternoon. All right, I'm bringing in front today a report on a potential another layer of helping with the shortage of substitutes. So what we would like to propose and look into is trying to find a way to incentivize and encourage some of our substitutes that are regulars to encourage them to do 10 days in a row. Our hope is that if we can pick 10 days in a row at one school, that will help. So basically assign 1 sub for elementary, 2 per middle, and 3 per high school. And so they'll have full-time subs on hand in case of a late call-in or something else. And then if we don't need them, we can also use them as co-teachers in an ECS room due to our shortages of aides. And then if we don't need them for that, we could help our colleagues at a campus school on another school on the campus. With that, it would increase our daily rate for a rank 1 substitute is usually $115.22. After, with this long-term sub, it would be $173.28. And then for a rank 5 substitute, typically it's $97.21 a day, and it would increase that to $145.82 a day.
It's great.
That's still less than if you do a 20-day stint in a classroom for, like, say, a maternity leave or a medical leave or an extended period. A rank 1 on that is still going to be $231.03, which is basically taking over the teacher daily rate, because at that point you're taking over all the duties of grading, lesson planning, calling parents, and doing that piece of it. So we just think we're just trying to find ways to encourage. We know it's tough all around the state and nation for multiple positions. This is one we think we can help try to attract some of our subs to do 10 days in a row versus 4 or 5.
Yes, excellent.
And that's what we
Anything
have.
further? Thank you, Mr. Deves. Any questions or concerns at this time?
I would make a comment to the board about really appreciate the team's work on this. We are very optimistic that this will help support our classrooms, and so that our teachers are not having to cover classrooms because we have unfilled subs, which is not a bad, certainly not to say anything negative against our schools or our staff, just sometimes life happens, and certainly we have a shortage of subs, and that's not unique to Oldham County, so we're very optimistic and appreciate the work to help mitigate these issues.
Thank you, Dr. Radford, and thank you, Mr. Deves. So, Superintendent, we are now ready for report number 3, sir.
Yes, so if you see in your packet, there's a status report on my ILP, and so as a requirement, just remind the board as a requirement for myself as superintendent from the state in terms of a program that I'm required to be a part of, and also just to keep our board informed, you'll see in your packet the 7 standards that all superintendents are assessed on, and so you can see through there. I won't take a lot of time to go through that, but I will also kind of highlight a couple of things. One, we want to continue to focus on our culture across our district, and that's standard 3 in terms of providing the very best supports that we can for our staff and for our students. And then the other piece, as you just heard from Mr. Deves, with the substitute plan, is also supporting from an HR perspective, and that is standard Standard 4, Standard 4, thank you, Human Resource Leadership, thank you. So we want to continue to look for ways to be able to support our staff so that we can have the best experiences for our kids. Certainly this school year has been very challenging, to say the least. It's hard, and I just applaud our staff across our district for what we're doing to have in-person instruction every day for students.
Absolutely. This is an excellent ILP report, and this report, which the superintendent provides to us on a monthly basis, will also help guide the board when it is that period of time for Dr. Radford's evaluation. I want to comment on a couple of things. At this point in time, it is my perspective that Dr. Radford is doing an excellent job with leadership in this district, and his focus has been on positivity and wellness, and we appreciate both of those things. Any other comments, questions for the superintendent? Great job. Thank you, Dr. Radford.
Thank you.
We are ready for Superintendent 4, Super Report 4.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So at this time, Mr. Dees will come forward and share a report on how we've opened school that will review our data and how where we are just past the 1 month mark with school. So Mr. Dees, if you would, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Deeps, before you get started, the report is on that side screen too. If you're sitting further in the back room, it may be easier to see. Just wanted to point that out. Welcome again.
Thank you. So it's nice to be able to sit up here and look back at the first month and say we've had in-person instruction with students in front of teachers. So I want to start with that piece of it.
Yes.
So this is a little bit of building on what we did a couple weeks ago and trying to update some numbers to give you the most updated information we have. Most of this is put together by Mr. Davis, who's not able to be with us right now, and Ms. Burgess, their team with Mr. Williams and Ms. Stewart in the DPP department. So we're just going to walk through a couple of the big picture items and then kind of answer questions if you have them. Big picture data from August the 11th to the 26th of this month. We had a total of 548 cases within the school system. 212 elementary, 122 middle, and 214 high. Community cases that same time period were 1470 out of 66,800. Our incident rate stands at 29.1 currently, which is down 56.8% in the last 3 weeks. The high was at 67.4 we are at 67.4 on 9/6/21. On that data. So that's just big picture of positivity in the county.
Yes, thank you.
Longitudinal data and quarantines are on the wall behind you and on the screen as well. The top line is our total quarantines in the county for schools. And then the bottom line shows a similar line of just our school-related quarantines on that piece. So you can see where we started on 8/15, how we drastically at the end of August, 1st of September, we went up. We were starting to come down, and we started test to stay too at around the 1st of September as well. So just kind of putting a little bit different graph picture for you guys on that one. Our high was almost to 500, and we're down to right above 100, 115 right now.
I would make mention, if you see on that line graph there, we started test to stay 9/8, if I remember correctly. So you can start to see just after 9/5, you start to see the data trend down in terms of quarantine and the impact test to stay had.
Yes, thank you.
Looking at the test to stay by numbers, on the very first day, we had 100 participants. We had 3 positives, so out of those 100. On the test to stay program, students go in for a rapid, or employees at that time go in for a rapid. It's a lower nasal swab of both nasals, and then within about 10 to 12 minutes, we should have results. If the results are positive, they have an option. They don't have to take a saliva PCR test if they want. They do not have to at that point. If you have a negative result on the rapid, you can go to school that day or work. If you have a positive, you cannot go to school or work. We did that for the first 2 or so weeks. And then just on last Thursday, we expanded test to stay. Test to stay now can be for any student or employee who is in the school system, or anybody who lives in their household who is on quarantine. That started last Thursday. Starting today, we expanded it once more at the Art Center, and now it's for any student who is on quarantine. That starts at 6 and goes to 9:30, or their family members. And then starting at 9 to 12, anybody who's affiliated to a household in Oldham County schools, if they're related to an employee or the student, they can go get tested just if they want to be sure or have nerves or are just wanting to do that piece of it. It's not because of quarantining for the late morning shift on that piece of it.
So, point of clarification, Mr. Dees, that would include extended family members?
They have to be in the household.
Living within the household?
Yes, ma'am.
But grandmothers, et cetera, et
As long as
cetera?
they're in the household and affiliated to a student registered P through 12 or an employee.
Thank you, sir.
On that, or a contractor who's contracted with the school to do work can do that as well.
Thank you.
The biggest thing on this is our test to stay just from 9/8 to 9/23 recouped 1,159 days of student instruction. In
Excellent.
person. Now, they would have received some instruction while at home, but any day that's gained back is a positive, so I do
Yes.
see the test to stay as a positive option for students and parents if they so choose to do that. And our partner with Pearl Laboratories have been really good in accommodating, and we have gotten a lot of school districts calling and asking, how are we doing it? What's the impact it's having? And I think principals and others would say, anytime we get kids in front of a teacher, it has a positive impact.
Yes.
That's where we're at on test to stay numbers.
And Mr. Dees, if I could just point out to the board, looking at the data, September 22nd, as an example, we had 0 positive results. On 9/23, we had 5 positive results. So I really just want to point out to the board that we're really trending in terms of really decreasing those number of positives that we're seeing on a daily basis, but we did see an increase there on 9/23, which indicates that, as you see, that, we still have cases that are happening across just within those numbers of quarantine students.
I think the other thing to note with that data is that it looks like about 25 kids who were able to go back to school rather than be quarantined for the full 10 days. So not only were they able to return to school, but had they been in school, rather than initially being asked to quarantine, they could have infected many or exposed many more students. So just wanted to make that note. Thank you, Mr. Deeves.
So a question was asked last time, why do we start school with a mask requirement? We wanted to point to two partners that started before us that we used as just some data points to say, hey, where should we go, where shouldn't we go? I know we showed these numbers at the last meeting as well, but both Warren County and Clark County, Warren County in southern Kentucky and Clark County just across the river, have similar populations. Warren County's a little bit bigger, Clark's a little closer to our size. But they started without a mask requirement. And if you look at this line graph, you're going to see what quarantines did to them. So they started, Greater Clark started in late July. They quickly went to 1,000 quarantines. Warren County started the second week of August, and they quickly went to 1,600 quarantines without the mask. And that's just because your distance is different and your exposures have a different piece of it. And that's just kids out of the classroom on the quarantine piece. We started about the same time, a little bit later than Warren, a couple days, and we did not get above 600 in that first week, and that's with mask for us. So inferring that if we had gone a different way, our quarantines would be up. I'm not inferring anything else other than quarantines, would have gone up and looked more like their line graph because the mask allowed us to reduce our number of quarantine numbers. And then you can see how we've gone this point so far.
Yes, thank you.
And then why the current mask requirement at this time? Masks are helping us to reduce this total number of quarantine. It's not getting rid of them. As you can see, we're still having 100 within the school and then maybe another 100 from out in the community, but it is greatly reducing them. We are able to have children within 3 feet of each other for longer periods of time. At the time, it also allowed us to do our Test to Stay program, and we are able to gain valuable in-person instruction for students that would otherwise have been quarantined. So that's why we currently have one now
Yes.
on that piece of it. Our daily attendance district-wide, sometimes we want to look at our daily attendance just as a whole district. We're still averaging right around 94.8 to 95 as our attendance across the district, which is nice. So that's day 11 through day 22 of school. You know, I think I said last time, a lot of districts would take that attendance every day on a normal school year. That's still a little bit low for us. We're usually 96 to 97 on that piece of it. So we see a little bit of dip compared to previous first 2 months of school, but I think it's better because of test to stay and our reductions in quarantines and that piece of it. So there's where we're at currently on day 11 through 22.
Yes.
Okay, so for the board, and I'd just like to share collaboration and partnerships with local health officials, just like to share with the board, we've been collaborating with our state public health officials, the Oldham County health professionals, and recently have engaged in with U of L and Norton's Hospital with pediatricians, infectious disease doctors, critical care, and epidemiologists to help us be able to determine our pathway forward and to help us make informed decisions. So we'll share more about that in a little bit later. But I just want to make sure that the board is aware of the collaboration, so it's not just from a school district perspective, but also with our health professionals, both locally and regionally, and from a state perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Radford.
And then at this time, I think that's the presentation until after public comment and we go to board action.
Thank you. Mr. Deves, let me ask board members if they have questions or comments. Let me know. It's an excellent report. Mr. Deves, I think it came new to the game, this report. Will you share that slide deck with
I will.
board members, please?
Yes, ma'am, I'll update it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, this is a super...
I do have one question.
Mr. Dodson.
I do have one question. To make it clear for everybody here, with the mask, there's only 3 foot of social distancing. Without the mask, it's up to 6 foot
For students, yes.
per student. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Ms. Hundley.
Did we ask Mr. Rhodes to be here? Did we invite him?
He was unable to attend.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, we will take this report under advisement. Thank you, sir. So, at this time in the meeting, the board is ready to go into executive session. No, we're not. Public expression session. Wish I could. Public expression. So, if you will allow me. We are designating a portion of our meeting to hear public comment regarding areas under the board's jurisdiction. Persons wishing to speak shall sign in with the registrar, and I believe you have all reviewed the policy on making public comment. Speakers shall not exceed the time limit allotted by the board, and we base the time limit on the number of individuals registered to speak. There are 40 persons wishing to address the board. So what is the pleasure of the board?
2 minutes.
It has been suggested that public expression will be limited to 2 minutes. Do I hear anything else, board members? So we're going to go with a 2-minute time allotment. Public criticism of individual staff members and individual board members is prohibited. Concerns about individual staff performance should be addressed with the staff member directly, or his or her immediate supervisor, or the board chairperson, respectively. Public expression is not a question and answer period. Any questions expressed by the speaker will be noted with directives for appropriate administration to follow up. The board, however, reserves the right to respond when appropriate or necessary. So that is our policy governing public expression. Mr. Dodson is going to navigate public expression this evening, and I would like to just add that I would like to respectfully ask that everybody who is at the podium deserves the respect of the audience. So if you could please hold your applause, hold your sidebars, and hold your any other kind of comments, et cetera, and give the person at the podium the respect that they deserve to address the board. Thank you so much. Mr.
Kehoe.
Dodson, I'm going to ask Mr. Kehoe to be our timekeeper.
Okay, first speaker, Cassidy Stocker.
Welcome back, Cassidy.
Hello. My name is Cassidy Stocker.
Cassidy, I'm going to invite you to take your mask off while you're at the podium so that we can hear you, honey. If you're comfortable doing that.
I think I am. I'm far enough away from everyone.
Okay.
My name is Cassidy Stocker, and I'm currently fighting brain cancer. And I would like to thank everyone who is wearing yellow in support of childhood cancer today. I know some of you don't like masks. I don't like them either. But they help keep people like me from getting sick. They help keep anyone from getting sick. And for me, that's worth a little bit of uncomfort. Masks suck. They really do. But being in the hospital, that sucks as well. I go to the hospital every week, and it's no fun. I'm stuck with needles, I'm tested for sicknesses, and put at risk because there are other kids that are sick in the hospital. Masks are the reason I am back in school, and I am so happy for that. My math map jumped by 10 points after dropping in VLA last year, just by being in school for a little while. I get to see my friends again, and I get to talk to my teachers in person. You have no idea how much that helps. It has brought me so much joy to be back in school, and I can be there because of masks. I am asking this for all of the immunocompromised. Please keep the mask mandate. I love school and I want to feel safe. I don't want to have to worry about getting COVID and ending up in the hospital. I hate the hospital, I hate needles, and I absolutely hate being out of school. Masks help limit my stays at the hospital, they help limit all kids' stays at the hospital, and they help us stay in schools. Masks do work, and we have to use them to stay safe.
Thank you, Cassidy.
Gray Stocker.
What was that first name, Larry?
Greg.
Welcome, Mr. Stocker.
Thank you. I'd like to address the phrase that's oftentimes invoked, follow the science. I think that a lot of times when we look at that, we think following the science means finding an article or a physician that supports what we think or what we believe. But in fact, it's much broader than that. It's actually looking at a culmination of all the data. And I thought I'd highlight some of the things that I know that the school board is relying on the Oldham County Health Department and others to make the decisions that you do. And these are some interesting ones that I think that set the table. There are 155 MD granting medical schools in the United States. All of them require masks for their in-person classes throughout COVID, and all recommend community masking. There are 37 DO granting medical schools in the United States. All of them require masks for in-person studying and schoolwork. All of them recommend masks for community protection. The U.S. News and World Report ranks 100 infectious disease institutions for researching infectious diseases throughout the world. All 100 recommend masking for community support. There are 3 Kentucky medical schools, 2 that are based on MD programs, 1 based on the DO. All 3 require masks for in-person, and all 3 recommend community masking. There's a Board of Health for the state as well as the county. Both recommend community masking. The 3 major health systems in Louisville, it's Norton Baptist and the University of Louisville Jewish. All 3 recommend community masking for mitigating COVID-19. There are 6 organizations throughout the world and in the state that are used to reference on whether we look at masking for schools. Those include the American Medical Association, National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Epidemiology, Center for Disease Control, World Health Organization, and the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Mr. Stocker.
All 6.
Time's up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Jenny Whitley.
While Ms. Whitley is coming to the microphone, let me just ask speakers, since we have reduced the time limit to 2 minutes, if you have additional information that you aren't able to share in this meeting, please feel free to send it to board members. Thank you.
All right, I'm an elementary school teacher and a parent to 3 students in our district, and I wanted to speak today because I feel like it's my duty. I'm a firm believer in universal masking in our schools. I see firsthand every day how masking affects our kids, and I'm going to tell you this, masking is key to keeping us in schools and keeping students safe until they have the option and the opportunity to be vaccinated. I know it feels strange to watch kids going into schools with masks, but you know what? I'm there every day, and those kids are happy. They don't mind. These kids want and they need to be in school. And for now, masking is the safest way to do this. I don't want to be in masks forever, just like Cassidy said. No one does. But taking them away now when our hospitals are overflowing, when our schools are doing so well, is reckless and dangerous. Removing masks scares me for my son who has asthma and is too young to be vaccinated. It scares me for our students with health conditions, our students with family members who have health conditions. If masks aren't required in our schools, we will become a vector for a deadly disease. Do we want that burden? Removing masks seems like a guaranteed path to more quarantines and fewer days of in-person school. I have taught NTI firsthand. It is hard on teachers, parents, and students. It's not ideal for learning. Being in school with masks is what is necessary to avoid another round of shutdowns. Look at what happened in southern Indiana. Every day as educators, we ask ourselves, what is best for kids? Is this what's best for kids? And I'll tell you what, when our hospitals are overflowing, absolutely this is what's best for kids. It is our duty to protect kids. According to a study out of Cincinnati, the rate of students getting diagnosed with COVID was 78% higher in partially masked schools. The rate of students being quarantined was 60% higher in those partially masked schools. Kids are flourishing. They're flourishing with masks. They're happy. They get to be with their kids, their friends, their teachers. They get an education that is in person, just like Cassidy said. And I will tell you, as a mom and as an educator, that makes all the difference. Teaching during a pandemic is hard in so many ways. It's hard on all of us. But I was asked the other day.
Mrs. Whitley, your
Yeah.
time's up. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you.
I hope I don't damage this next name.
I can't resist, though, Board Member Dodson, how many of us wish we could go back and be in Miss Whitley's classroom?
Sandra Layden, oh, wait a minute, yeah, Sandra Layden.
You nailed it.
That's good.
You got it. Hello, I'm the parent of a current
Welcome.
NOMS student
Welcome.
and 2 Oldham County graduates. My eldest is a high school teacher at Princeton High School in Cincinnati. They started the school year with optional masks, but quickly went to a mandate after a flurry of sick teachers, children, and administrators. My daughter wanted me to express to you that she is thankful her school has a mask requirement now. But I come here today wanting not to fight and argue the merits of masks, but instead to ask what if, and further ask, is there harm in maintaining policies that are working for just a little while longer? I believe every person in this room on either side of the argument loves their children. I believe most would go out of their way to help other people's children as well. I don't think anyone doubts that. I also think everyone here would rather we didn't have to wear masks. No one wants masks forever. But they are working for Oldham County right now. And the data shows that masks in school do work, especially for the more transmittable Delta variant. We can look to the figures out of Arizona, the recent data out of Maricopa and Pima counties, and their policies showed that without masks in place, they're 3.5 more times more likely to have an outbreak. And I believe most parents actually know that masks do help. According to a study by the Kaiser Family Foundation, 6 out of 10 American parents support masks in school. So does it matter? I think this is where we ask what if. We can look to Aiken County, South Carolina as an example. The school board dropped a request for masks before the school year, and earlier this month, Ethan Blue and Emily Bronsonen, both students in Aiken, died of COVID. Ethan was a 4th grader and Emily a sophomore in high school. The secretary at Ethan's school, Giselle Moreland, also died of COVID a few weeks ago. Parents there are now showing up to the board meetings to ask for mask requirements, begging the school board to do something. And there are similar stories in Escambia County, Florida, where parents are trying to get masks to protect their children and their neighbors' children. There are hundreds of counties across the nation facing the same challenge we are here, but we need to ask what if. What if we dropped the mask and a child died? 2 children died, an administrator or a teacher died, how many deaths would be acceptable? What if it was your child, your neighbor's child? Would you feel differently? I venture to say that no one in this room wants a child, teacher, or an employee of Oldham County Schools to die because they were exposed to COVID at school or work.
Ms. Layden.
And that is the crux of it. We know masks work.
Ms. Layden?
Yes.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tara, is it Pouch or? Did I damage the last name?
Well, first and foremost, we'd like to begin with a statement of gratitude. Science says that your vote to mandate the mask in schools protects all of our children, those who don't want to infect others, the vulnerable children who far too often find themselves forgotten and left behind. It even protects the children who come from families fighting this mandate. We know those parents would disagree with us, but our stance is not a subjective one. It is not opinion, it is not political, nor is it conspiracy. It is based only in science. Today we come to you as a group to implore you to keep the mask mandate in place. We'd like to address some of the arguments posed by those against masks. Links to all studies were included in an email that was signed by nearly 200 people. The first claim, children have a 0% chance of dying from this virus. Last Thursday, 15-year-old Christopher C.J. Gordon Jr., a sophomore in Fayette County, died from COVID. On September 5th, 15-year-old Jordan Klein from Shelby County died from COVID. This summer, Kentucky lost a 5-month-old baby to COVID, and the deaths keep coming. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, 43 states have now reported pediatric deaths due to COVID. According to the CDC, only 1 child died from the flu last year, but nearly 500 children have now died from COVID. Death is only one extreme factor when considering long-term consequences of any pandemic. According to the AAP article previously mentioned, there is an urgent need to collect more data on longer-term impacts of the pandemic on children, including ways the virus may harm the long-term physical health of infected children, as well as its emotional and mental health effects. It took decades to understand the long-term implications of varicella or herpes or HIV. COVID is no different. The CDC voluntarily recalled this test, not because it was inaccurate, but because they wanted to have a more efficient test that can check for both the flu and COVID at the same
Ms.
time.
Pouch, your time's up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Penelope McCollum.
At the recent Oldham County Fiscal Court meeting, a woman referenced a study released in May from the University of Louisville, supposedly showing that there's no difference in spread for universal masking. But U of L's own School of Public Health wrote a critique of this study stating, "We found this article poorly structured with a sketchy and biased description of the background and a seriously flawed methodology and improper analysis, hence a wrong conclusion with vital consequences. Source matters." Neither one of the authors, Daniel and Damian Guerra, is a medical doctor. Damian Guerra is a PhD who studies nutrition allocation in plants, and Daniel Guerra has a PhD in plant science. Since publication, both have left U of L to start a company in Colorado that sells supplements. The circumstances surrounding their departure from U of L are unclear. On the other hand, a new study by Dr. Catherine Auger, an MD at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, directly contradicts Guerra and Guerra's findings. And this is the study that was mentioned by Ms. Whitley earlier. She already mentioned those statistics, and I'll just add the ratio of quarantines per COVID-19 case was 30% higher in the partially masked schools. We've also heard these arguments from anti-maskers. Masks are dangerous. Learning is impaired when kids cannot see the lower half of people's faces, and kids are in danger of inhaling bacteria from dirty masks. A Public Library of Science 1 study found that children aged 7 to 13 have been shown to be able to make accurate inferences about the emotions of others with partially covered faces. And this is what is in an email sent to you last night. The FDA has improved a transparent surgical mask for children who need to see their teachers' mouths, and these masks may be added to any child's 504 or IEP. and concerns about reduced oxygen sats and carbon dioxide retention have not been supported by data. Again, a study from the Annals of the American Thoracic Society demonstrate lower infection rates with masking. And there are several studies that show no evidence to suggest face masks can increase the chance of developing pneumonia or any other bacterial, fungal, or viral infection.
Mrs. McCollum, your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Warthen. Did I get that right?
Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Another argument posed was this: the PCR test we're using has been recalled because it can't distinguish between the flu and COVID. But this is untrue. The CDC voluntarily recalled this test, not because it was inaccurate, but because they wanted to have a more efficient test that could check for both the flu and COVID at the same time. And yes, it differentiates between the two. Just last week, Cassidy Stalker had to go to the ER for chemo-related fever. She received this exact PCR test. Her MyChart showed separate results for COVID-19, flu strain A, flu strain B, and RSV. Finally, a common argument is my body, my choice. The argument for mask mandates parallels the argument for vaccination mandates. Precedent for mandated vaccines was set in 1905 with Jacobson versus Massachusetts, a ruling that upheld the authority of states to enforce compulsory vaccination laws, and it's been upheld several times over the years. Just recently, the Supreme Court cited this case as precedent when agreeing that universities have the right to mandate vaccines for students or fine those who refuse them. Why? Because the courts established in 1905, liberty is not an absolute right in each person to be, and at all times and all circumstances, wholly free from restraint. In other words, personal freedom does not come without responsibility. One's personal freedom ends when their actions put the community in peril. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worthen. Give me a second. Let me just remind the audience, it's difficult to hear the speaker at the podium when there are conversations going on in the audience. And also, I would remind you all to please respect the person who's addressing the board. Thank you.
Amanda Colazzo. Hey, I got another one right.
I take no credit for Mr. Dodson's pronunciation of these names, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Per the reporting at the Oldham County Fiscal Court meeting on September 21st, pre-Delta stats showed that 74% of COVID-related deaths were in people aged 70 plus. Since Delta, however, the number has dropped to 40%. Many younger people are dying. More Kentuckians are now hospitalized and on ventilators than ever before. And over the last 16 weeks, over 30% of our COVID cases in Oldham County have been pediatric cases. As of last week, Kentucky had the 4th highest rate of average daily pediatric hospitalizations. As of today, our county is still in the red, with a higher case per population rate than we had at the last vote. If you look at the number of cases spread through the community versus those contracted at school on the Oldham website, you can see that the vast majority of cases are clearly not contracted at school. But numbers are going up anyway because many people are not vaccinating or wearing masks in our community. As a result, the only way to protect our children is to send them in masks. No one likes masks, no one wants to wear masks, but now is not the time to stop wearing them. We must be responsible for all our children. I hope no one mistakes our recent quietude or lack of presence at prior meetings for apathy. Those of us who are pro-mask have largely avoided meetings because so many people will attend without masks, and we don't want to be a part of loud, angry protests. But despite our silence, our stance remains unchanged. As long as a vaccine is unavailable for children or eligible people refuse to take it, and as long as COVID remains a real, scientifically proven threat, we will continue to fight respectfully for this mandate to stay in place. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Amanda. Oh, Mrs.
What was that name, Larry?
Mrs. Stalker.
Shannon Stalker.
I'm wearing this because I'm in the hospital a lot, as you all know by now. During Cassidy's last infusion, just 2 weeks ago, the oncology floor housed more than just cancer patients. Down the hall, in the bone marrow transplant unit, were pediatric COVID patients. I asked the nurse why there were COVID patients in a cancer ward, and she said it was because they were out of room. All parents in each unit get our Sprites, get our crackers, get our plasticware from the same snack room. We ride the same elevators up to the 5th floor, and we take the same elevators down to the lobby, which means that parents with kids with cancer will inevitably find themselves shoulder to shoulder with parents of kids with COVID. All the time, people say to me, I can't imagine what you're going through. And I am begging you to please imagine. We stayed home from school for a year and a half. Now, we deal with people applauding the idea that we should homeschool because we should keep our kids home. Imagine that. Our son is 11 and in elementary school, where the vast majority of people are unvaccinated. If he catches this virus, he knows it could kill his sister. Imagine that. Cassidy's brain tumor drives her temperature higher. For her, masks cause fevers, and those fevers lead to migraines, exhaustion, and nausea, but she wears one anyway, everywhere. And she did before she was diagnosed with cancer last October because it was the right thing to do. If everyone shared that kind of empathy and had gotten the vaccine when it first became available, we would most certainly not have recorded over 26,000 pediatric COVID cases in Kentucky this month. How many lives could have been saved? Can you imagine that?
Ms. Stalker, thank you. Amanda Hayden.
Thank you. Thank you for the mask mandate. Somehow, the simple public health measure of wearing a mask when we're indoors has become politicized. And while your decision was not one that might have been popular here in OC, make no mistake, it was the right one. We keep hearing this about parent choice from people who oppose the universal mask mandates in schools, that somehow they should get to choose whether or not their child will participate in safety measures. It's ludicrous. It's really ludicrous. This is a public school system. We can't send our daughter to school in spaghetti straps. We can't send cupcakes in for birthdays. So no, wearing a mask during school is not parent choice. Children are guaranteed a safe public education under law, and masks are what makes that possible right now. I appreciate also that you all recognize that you're not public health experts, and you instead rely on them to help you craft policies that keep all 12,000 OC students safe, because there are no reputable doctors that are advocating for not wearing masks in school. None. My daughter is a junior. This year is the first normal school year of high school that she's had. I would send her to school in full-on scuba gear if that meant she could go to school every day. Both of my children are fully vaccinated, but they do not mind one bit wearing a mask to protect others around them. They know because they care about their friends, their neighbors, their teachers who are inundated with the virus all day long inside their classrooms, and their community. The kids are fine. It's the parents that need a lesson in kindness and compassion. There are 12,000 children in this district. Obviously, the parents of all those students cannot be here tonight. But just because the same few dozen disruptive voices show up at board meetings and screech and yell does not mean they represent most parents in this county. Luckily, your job is not to kowtow to the most popular or the loudest voice. Your job is to make our schools safe for all of our students. We really appreciate that you've done that. And we know there's really no debate right now about what's safe, and that's universal maskings for everyone in the school building. Again, thank you, and I hope that we can continue to rely on OC to follow the public health experts and keep masks until they say it's safe to remove them.
Ma'am,
Maybe.
time's up.
All right, like Ted Lasso.
Brian Hayden. Brian Hayden.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but 2 minutes caught a lot of us by surprise. But as Ted Lasso says, doing the right thing is never the wrong thing. Thank you all so much. I'll yield my time.
Ethan Moore.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm normally someone who doesn't speak out much and just goes with the flow, but after the response in the BR notes pertaining to salary raises, I felt compelled to voice my concerns. Comments like "get involved, stay involved," and "it just can't be about pay, no one goes into the education field for the money," comments are off base. Why so many questions about raises? The district pay scale hasn't been changed for 7 years. 7 years. We received a one-time $1,000 stipend 3 years ago, and that's it. And if you put yourselves in our shoes, you can see why the dismissive response about a pay increase we received was unacceptable, especially given the fact of how much more we've been asked to do during the pandemic. In the last 10 years, the cost of home ownership in Oldham County has increased by 43%. Add inflation, and teachers haven't even gotten cost of living raises to keep up. In closing, I come to make you aware of the pulse of the faculty and staff across the district. We recognize we do not have a corporate tax base like Jefferson County, but we do know that there are funds that can be used for salary increases and expect this to be a priority and no longer ignored. I have worked here and invested 18 years of my life. Throughout the community, we hear about the award-winning Oldham County schools. When looking to purchase a house, the award-winning Oldham County schools are listed as a perk. That being said, it's past time for the district to take care of those who make this an award-winning district, the teachers. We've been told we're valued and appreciated, but it's time to show us with a raise. I look forward to continuing this conversation as further inaction regarding pay increases is unacceptable. We've more than earned it, and we deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Jennifer Terrelli.
And while Jennifer's coming to the podium, Dr. Radford would like to share something with you.
Mr. Moore, and to our staff here, I will tell all of our teachers and our staff, from me to you, 100% recognize that this year and during this pandemic has asked and required quite a bit. I'll take responsibility for any dismissive comments because that's not my heart. But I will share with you and share with our board that we'll work really hard to look at what actions we can take to be able to support our teachers and our staff across our district. But I'll take responsibility for that, but that's not my heart, but I appreciate you coming forward and sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radford. Mr. Moore, every year we have worked towards increasing salaries and benefits for our staff and our administrators. Please know that is also a commitment from this board. Thank you. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the board for following CDC, AAP, Oldham County Health Department, and countless other entities and studies that recommend and show that requiring universal masking in schools help keep kids in schools and protect them from contracting and spreading COVID. With that said, you all had put safety protocols in place for this meeting, yet there are many that still won't comply, even with them up here on the screen. I want to speak about my situation personally. My son has asthma. He is already on daily breathing treatments to keep him from having an episode that would land him in the hospital. If he were to have to go to the hospital, there is a very real possibility there wouldn't be a bed for him due to the amount of COVID patients and lack of staff and resources. COVID aggressively attacks the respiratory system, and if my child were to contract it, would most likely become extremely, if not deathly ill. Requiring masks in schools has allowed my son to attend in-person instruction as safely as possible right now. I believe we have all seen that by requiring masks for all, that we have greatly reduced the exposure and spread of COVID amongst our most precious. This has led to a decrease in the number of students being quarantined and missing vital in-person instruction. Not only do masks allow my son to attend in-person instruction, but countless other children with underlying health issues. The requirement of masks in the Test to Stay program are working, and until we can get all children fully vaccinated, we should continue to implement as many safety measures as we can to protect them. The numbers haven't changed since the board first first implemented masks, so this is not the time to fail our children in keeping them safe. If the board does eliminate the mask requirement in schools, I know hundreds of parents will have to remove their children from in-person instruction in order to protect their health and safety. So I would like to ask what resources, curriculum, and programs the board has in place for those students who can no longer attend in-person instruction due to the health hazard if masks aren't in place. How will those parents make that decision when most don't have the ability to stay at home and become their children's school teachers and try to learn what teachers have studied for years to perfect, but what most people work to provide for their families? So thank you for your time today. I'm confident that you will continue to listen to the experts with many combined years of education and knowledge and do what is right to keep our children and staff safe and healthy in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Kristen Worthen.
Hi, thank you. I'm here today to thank you for the mask requirement so far, to ask you to keep it in place moving forward or for the time being, and to share the perspective of a medically fragile family. I have 2 elementary school kids who did VLA last year to protect their 3-year-old little brother who was born with a single ventricle heart, so essentially half of a heart, and is immunocompromised. He had open heart surgery as an infant. He requires another within the next 6 months, and I pray to God that he will make it through that so that he can one day attend the amazing elementary school that his siblings go to. 3 of his conditions are on the CDC's list of conditions that make kids high risk for COVID. There's no other options for families like ours but to send our kids to school. There's no hospital school for siblings of medically fragile kids. There's no virtual option. Aside from quitting my job, moving, uprooting my entire family, we have to attend school in person. Furthermore, they need to attend school in person. Their education suffered last year during virtual. But they have to be able to attend school safely. Our first direct exposure to COVID as a family was in the classroom about 3 weeks ago. A child sat across the table, directly across from my 5th grader, coughing all day long. They were all masked properly, and not a single kid at that table caught COVID. Masks work, and I know that you all know that they do. I'm going to send you a study. But what this is, it came out last Friday. This light blue number, that's the increase of cases in schools that have a mask requirement. And the dark blue is the increase in cases of COVID in school without a masking requirement. And COVID spread in our community is higher now than it was when the Oldham County Health Department recommended masking. So to stop requiring now would be willful negligence on the part of the district. It would also effectively exclude disabled students from public schools in violation of the American with Disability Act and the Rehabilitation Act.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chad Seeley.
Welcome.
We all disagree on some things, but we all agree on one thing: the safety of children. Parents, teachers, the board, there's not a soul in this room that wants to harm the children of this community. It's misinformation dividing us. And that's why, on behalf of Mothers Against Misinformation, I've raised $10,000 to reduce misinformation in Oldham County. Now, the experts and politicians agree on the science. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Always do your own research and don't listen to a word I say. When it comes to vaccine safety, the science is very compelling. You can give the same dose to a 300-pound man and a 50-pound child. There is not a single peer-reviewed long-term study that gives you any concern over safety. And in fact, these vaccines are so safe, if you're a medical doctor and you suggest otherwise, you can have your license suspended. So let's stop debating the safety and let's start demonstrating the safety. 10 COVID vaccines are less than an ounce. Volunteer to take 10 small and safe doses of any COVID vaccine within a 30-day period. 30 days after your 10th dose, assuming you're still alive, a $1,000 donation will be made to Oldham County. Let's put the misinformation to rest. Let's put the science to the test. As leaders in this community that are willing to encourage, enforce, dictate science on others, will you be the first to volunteer? Although I can't see your face, this will show your faith. The science is clear. Have no fear.
Mr. Selly, your time.
Volunteer. Sign up
time's
here.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley.
Lauren Burden. I'm hoping we're not damaging names too bad.
That's all right, close enough.
Miss Lauren, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I might need a moment. I'm not sure what I just heard. It was a little confusing, so bear with me. My name's Lauren Bearden. I've lived here almost 35 years. I've gone K through 12 here, and I now have a first grader at Kenwood Station. I'm also an RN at Norton Brownsboro Hospital, so trust me when I say I get it. When people say that these are uncomfortable, I've worn them for 12 plus hours a day since March of 2020. As a nurse, I've done CPR in a mask. I've pushed heavy patients in a bed through hallways in a mask. I've done a lot of things in a mask, so I get it. They're not fun, I understand. That said, we've seen the information, we've seen the data. We know that no masks for our students means more quarantines, fewer instructional days, more community spread, and it's my understanding if we stop universal masking, then we can no longer do the Test to Stay program based on the state's requirements to have a Test to Stay program. I think we saw in that slideshow the program has been amazing. Our quarantines sharply decreased. We saw, I think, almost 1,200 recovered instructional days, if I saw that right. So I think that's a huge success if it's just started in the last 3 weeks. I want to keep that program around, and if universal masking helps, then let's keep it. We've seen the examples also of Warren County, Kentucky, Greater Clark. I think we saw that data there about before and after the mask mandates. It's hard to argue with those numbers. We've seen that they're recommended by the CDC, WHO, AMA, AAP, all of our major medical organizations, local, state, national, international. The WHO are recommending universal masking in the school setting. We know recently about a third of our community cases are pediatric, so it's here. Our kids are getting it. They're vectors. Fortunately, it's not making, a lot of them don't get horribly sick, but they can still spread it. They can spread it in the community. And again, as we've seen, it results in more quarantines and fewer instructional days, if they do have the virus. So that's all I have to say. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bearden.
Lisa Paris.
So here's what I was going to say. I'll give you a copy of it. I'm not going to say it. But I am going to address a couple things that have come to light to me since I wrote this. Some of the information that you guys have is wrong, very wrong, like the Test to Stay information that you're showing on the graphs. And I can tell you this from my own personal experience. This is firsthand information. As a mom who took a bunch of kids to Test to Stay for a whole week, my PCP told me that my son's negative test was a false negative because any child that has actually had the COVID-19 disease and recovered is going to test positive for it for 5 weeks or more, okay? So any child that actually tested positive, if they go to the Test to Stay and they test negative or positive again, it's skewing the system. It's skewing all of the numbers. And I don't know how you guys deal with that without somebody bean counting it one at a time and looking them up and saying, did they test positive? If they did, then this is a positive that they already recovered from it and they have antibodies. But none of these numbers make any sense. None of them are valid. Thalidomide babies were medically approved by 155 medical
Lisa,
universities.
if you'll address the board, I would appreciate it.
There's just, everybody's right. There's a lot of misinformation, but there's a lot of people not using their critical thinking on the information that we do have, okay? Now, I'm blessed. I have 6 pretty healthy children But they have been more sick this year since they started school, I blame the mask, than they have ever been. And they are religious mask wearers. They go nowhere. They're big gamers. They sit at home all the time and game when I go out and about in the community. And they brought COVID to me, I believe, from school, and we all had it. I'm not blaming anyone. I don't care that we had it. I'm glad that we had it. I'm glad that we had COVID and got over it, because I feel like I am more secure in this kind of immunity than I am with any kind of a vaccine, okay? I also don't
Ms.
support...
Parrish, time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay Tickner.
Have to say, welcome, Ms. Nykirk. It's so glad that you're here, and acknowledge that a lot of people watch the fiscal court meeting for the first time and probably ever, because I've been hearing all kinds of stats coming this way. I want to make a point, and do people die from this virus? Yes. Do children die from this virus? Yes. If you look at it statistically, 0.003% under the age of 19 in the state of Kentucky over 21 months have died of this virus. That 0.003% is devastating. It's horrific. It's so sad. But that is a very small percentage compared to all the kids in the state of Kentucky. We have to acknowledge the danger level for our kids. The vast majority of our kids are not in danger from this virus. We've all had it. My kids have all had it, and we did survive, and we were okay. It was rough for me more than it was for them, but we've had it. My son suffers from migraines. He's been dealing with it since the masks are on. And he should not have to wear a mask. We're not about anti-masking. We're about mask choice. My son has immunity. He has natural immunity, which according to a study in Israel is 13 to 26 times stronger than immunity from a vaccine. So we need to consider those things. Also want to bring up that you guys can see, you all are sitting in the most dangerous building in all of America. All of America. Because you can go, according to the CDC, college football games are not super spreaders, as people yell and scream without masks on right next to each other. Not a super spreader. The Louder Than Life tour in Louisville this weekend, yeah, it looks like little tiny specks. Those are people all right next to each other, screaming and singing in each other's faces. We're safe there. You've got your elites here at the Emmys. They're safe as well, laughing at all of us. The U.S. Open, college football. And yet our kids are stuck in a mask for 7 hours a day, away from their friends, not looking at facial expressions. It's unnecessary. And again, I'm not about anti-mask. I'm about mask choice.
Ms. Tickner, your time's up.
One size doesn't fit all. Thank you.
Steve Hay.
What was the name, Larry?
Steve Hay, H-A-Y.
Hi, I'm here today on behalf of my 7-year-old son who has never spent a day of elementary school without a mask on his face. Over 200 days, some in person, some behind a computer screen, all absent the normal learning environment he and the rest of our children deserve. As you are well aware, we are going on 18 months of COVID impact. We've dealt with school shutdowns, quarantines, masks, social distancing, virtual learning, hybrid learning, and the list goes on. Last year, we were told that these mitigation measures were absolutely necessary to curtail the spread of the virus, but yet cases went up and down multiple times despite public health officials adamantly proclaiming that enacting such measures would defeat the virus. After 18 months of data regarding test scores, depression, anxiety, overdose, suicide, etc., those same experts have finally come to the realization that kids should be in school full time, at least for now. Should we be surprised? These are the same people that said just 2 weeks, just 1 month, just 2 months, just one mask, just mask outdoors, just mask indoors, just 2 masks, just until the vaccine is rolled out, just until everyone has access to a shot, just until we get 50% of the population vaccinated, just until we get 2.5 million Kentucky residents vaccinated, just until the booster is approved. When does this end? How long are we willing to negatively impact our children for a virus that overwhelmingly poses no imminent threat to them? The guidance being put forth to justify these mitigation measures is arbitrary at best and applied the same across communities with vastly different population densities and dynamics. Since school is open, there has been a grand total of 1 pediatric hospitalization in Oldham County. Out of 17,000 Oldham Countyans under the age of 18. We had been told we must stay 6 feet away from one another indoors. The former FDA commissioner did an interview last week in which he revealed the 6 feet measurement was completely made up. The same 6 feet measurement that has been used as a basis to quarantine children over the last 18 months. The map published by daily health officials in Frankfurt is supposed to be used as determining high COVID transmission within our community. If 17 Oldham Countyans have COVID, that puts us in a state of high transmission according to public health. 17. In a county of 67,000 people.
Mr. Hay, time's up. Dr. Amber Kahn.
Hello, my name is Dr. Amber Kahn, and I am a bonus mom to 3 students in the Oldham County School System. One is a graduate just this year. I'm here as a healthcare professional to thank you for the mask mandate. You've heard a lot of studies today, and I came prepared to share with you some recent research that is school-based about how masks do reduce transmission. So I won't go into that to be respectful of your time. I do want to share one recent study that I looked at regarding school outbreaks. So we know that if there is a positive case in a school, it is not just inside a school. Of course, it puts other people at risk outside the school system. There was a study of 1,000 public schools, K through 12, in the U.S. 8.4% of those school outbreaks were in systems with early mask mandates. So that applies to Oldham County. We did implement an early mask mandate. Compare that with 59% of school-based outbreaks in the schools in the systems where the schools had no mask mandate. So we are doing a good job, and I implore you to, when you consider a mask policy update, to please to re-up it and to keep our children safe. I think that we all as parents want our children to grow up, to be healthy, and to reflect our values. And so by doing so, we all can agree that our children are important. Keeping them healthy is important. Universal masking is not something that it's a temporary measure. So if we can do that, in a temporary way, we won't need masks anymore. And that way, all of our kids can grow up, and they'll tell their kids about this weird time in history when they had to wear masks. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for allowing me the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kahn.
Let me remind y'all to keep the conversation down while the speaker's talking. We need to hear the speaker the same as y'all do. Michelle Elliott.
I'll keep this very short. Fear is a very, very powerful emotion that has been shown evident tonight. My children, I do not feel should have to wear a mask because an adult is scared of a virus that is survivable. I have taught my children not to be scared of this because I don't think it's fair to them, to a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, to tell them if you don't keep your mask up, you're going to get someone sick. I just think that is completely unfair to these kids. I'm not an anti-masker. I believe it should be about your choice. If you want your child in a mask, that is fine. I told my children at the beginning of this, when we didn't think we were going to be required to wear a mask, if you have a friend at school who has a mask on, no comments to them about it. You be respectful of their choice and their parents' choice, because that's what it should be about.
Micah Kane.
Got to cut this down to 2 minutes, so I got to talk fast. My name's Micah Kane. My oldest is a student at Locust Grove. Welcome, Ms. Nykirk. I'm butchering your name. I apologize. I hope you will bring some new guidance to this board. It's desperately needed. I, like many parents around the county, am growing increasingly concerned with this board and the direction that Oldham County Schools is moving. Some specific examples: while stating that they're not moving in the direction of critical race theory, yet unanimously approving a board candidate who appears to be in favor of critical race theory in some form or fashion, which is the complete opposite of judging someone not by the color of their skin but the content of their character. pro-LGBTQ material for libraries and elementary schools being made available, and masking mandates. It's become increasingly clear to me that this school board is not taking any parental concerns into consideration and instead moving forward with an agenda that turns our educational centers into indoctrination centers. That being said, I find addressing this board to be a futile effort, so instead I'm here to address the public. I apologize I have to turn my back to you. If you're concerned like I am, I strongly encourage you to bring with you to these meetings people who feel the same that we do, even if we don't have kids enrolled in Oldham County schools yet, or if they already have. Encourage and support each other and support those that would like to see a directional shift in these schools to run for the school board. We have 3 positions opening up in the school board in November of 2022, and if board members won't listen to parents, we need ones that will. Lastly, I'd like to reiterate what Ms. Tishner said in regards to mask mandates. Mask mandates is psychological abuse to children. When C.S. Lewis was asked about living in an age of an atomic bomb, his response is perfect for how we should live and raise our children in an age of COVID. He said, in a way, we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb or COVID. How are we to live in an age of COVID? I'm tempted to reply, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year, or as you would have lived in Viking Age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed as you might live in an age of cancer, of syphilis, of paralysis, of air raids, railway accidents, car accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all you have loved were already sentenced to death before the virus was invented, and a high percentage of us are going to die in unpleasant ways. We have one great advantage over our ancestors and aesthetics, but we have that still. It's perfectly ridiculous to go about because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which has already bristled.
Officer Simpson, we need your help.
If that virus is covered, let it find us in sensible things, praying, working, teaching, listening to music, braving the children, playing tennis.
Mr. Kane.
They may break our bodies, but they need not dominate our minds.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
When we say time's up, or we will have you removed. It's that simple. We've got a time limit. Everybody's adhered to it so far, and we intend for everybody else to adhere to it. This is a public meeting, and we're going to keep it orderly like it should be. Is that understood? Okay. Tara Phillips.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
2 years ago, I had to sign a paper and bring an open box of Tylenol for my child to school for your nurse to be allowed to administer it. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay to tell a parent they ought to do what they ought to do regarding our children's health. Do we call this freedom? We know in our heart of hearts what is right and what is wrong. Freedom as a whole is on the line here, and a person's freedom to choose what he or she believes is essential. Freedom is the condition of being free of restraint, especially the ability to act without control or interference by another or by circumstance. Our freedom does not cease to exist in the face of crisis. Even our kids have rights. Rights are what is just, lawful, morally good. That which a person has a just claim to that belongs to a person by law, by nature, and by tradition. I come to you in mourning of the loss of freedom, as well as for our kids, to represent how the children feel about the treatment and the atmosphere they have sadly been forced to receive from a once happy occasion of learning and socializing in school. I am a parent who sent my children to school knowing that they would be socialized and exposed to the whims of the world outside the home. But this is not happening any longer.
Hold a minute, stop the clock. Can you all keep it down?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, if Mr. Kane has been asked to leave the building, he is now trespassing.
That's somebody else, Joyce.
It's somebody else. Officer?
Okay, this gentleman is now trespassing.
Ma'am, you're going to get your time. Ladies and gentlemen, just hold it down for a minute. everybody was given a time limit to speak. Everybody's got it by that time limit so far. We haven't had a problem with anybody. And that's not fair to the rest of y'all.
Not the same guy.
All right, thank you, I stand corrected. We'll just let the officers settle this dispute. Would you like to continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
Thank you.
It's not fair to her, they can't hear her. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we please resume public expression?
Ms. Phillips, go on and finish.
Yes, sir, thank you. I come to you in mourning of the loss of freedom as well as for our kids to represent how the children might feel about the atmosphere and treatment they're receiving. It is no longer them being able to come out of their shell, make friends, and interact with other students. They need to be taught, and teaching is how a person helps them to learn, someone to help them develop, since the lack of freedom is likened to repression, and repression prevents natural development. That is a dictionary definition.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes, sir.
time's up.
Oh, well, it didn't seem like it. Are you sure I can't
Yeah.
have 15 more seconds?
I gave you an extra 20 seconds for the disturbance. Sean Roberts. Sean Roberts.
Okay, move on.
Okay, move on. Beth Lamprex. I hope I didn't damage that one.
You did good. It's Beth Lamprecht.
I was close.
German. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
I'm here tonight to ask you not to raise our taxes. And the reason I'm asking this is because I've been a teacher for 27 years. I'm a rank 1 teacher. I've done everything from kindergarten through college, homeschool, public school, private school, Montessori school, you name it, I've taught it. What I've done the last 4 years is taught in Oldham County. And here's why I don't want my taxes raised. My money went over $110,000 to a consultant named Michelle Shelton to advise us on BLM policy. That's a waste of my money. My money went to a principal who took one of my students, who was 16, into a room with the superintendent and a member of the Board of Ed to intimidate him on his political views. That's where my money went. I don't want my taxes raised. My money goes to people who stop me from teaching. I am required to teach an indoctrinated curriculum where I had to teach Margaret Sanger was a hero for an entire week in AP history. I was required as an English sub to censor my students, and they were not allowed to use certain news media sources in their writing because it's in the curriculum. I don't want my money going to that. I was infuriated to find out that one of my students cannot have, he's a black student, by the way, he cannot have a Confederate flag in the back window of his pickup truck because it's a Christian symbol, but there's a teacher in OC High School who has an LGBTQ flag in his room and another teacher who has a BLM flag in her room. That's what my money goes to, and I'm sick and tired of my money going to crap like that. So I don't want my taxes raised, and if you want to know why teachers don't teach and why you have no subs, I'm a former sub, I'm a former teacher, 3 college degrees, rank 1. You don't have good teachers like me because you all make terrible decisions.
Corey White.
Can we just dispel the rumor that one of us were in that room, because none of the 4 of us were in that room. The superintendent was. Oh, okay, but a board member was not. I just want to. A member from the board of that building.
That's a site-based board, and they make the curriculum also.
Okay, thank you, board members. Let's proceed with public expression.
Mr. White, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to echo the sentiments in support of masks and appreciate that you follow recommendations of the County Health Department and the Board of Health. Ask you to keep that. So I'm another parent with an at-risk child at home. So I'd like to be able to keep my child in school here, so protect that other child. We moved out here specifically for the schools. I'd like to keep my child in these great schools. So I appreciate it, and then I'm going to just see the rest of my time after saying thank you all for sticking with us as a community in a trying time. This is not easy. Leadership's not easy. Leadership through a pandemic is a massive challenge. So every decision you've had to make has been charged, has been difficult. I'm just saying we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. White. Bethany Shoemaker.
Welcome.
Hello. Remember back in the good old days when you were a kid, you were carefree and excited about life, playing with your friends, riding your bike to the candy store, and buying your favorite candy for a nickel or a dime, maybe a sour apple blow pop or a red hot fireball that you couldn't pop into your mouth, otherwise it would burn your mouth, but it tasted so good. Sorry. Then all of a sudden things changed. How would you feel if you were forced to wear a mask every day at school all day long? Not so carefree anymore. Some pros and cons. Face coverings. Pro, not be able to see facial expressions. And that's a con also. A con is hard to articulate. Pro is attached facial tissue if one needs to blow their nose. That's supposed to be a joke. Cons, germs, sitting on my son's face all day and breathing in his own carbon dioxide and whatever diseases are on the mask. Sorry. Con, reduced ability to concentrate and dizziness, which I have right now a little bit. Listen to this. Dentists are seeing more oral issues these days. Here's a quote from Dr. Kashgiran, a board-certified oral surgeon in San Diego. Mouth breathing leads to a decrease in saliva. Certain elements of our saliva clean our teeth and help fight bacteria. When that balance is disrupted, it can result in bad breath cavities and periodontal issues. Forcing our children and grandchildren to wear face coverings on a daily basis. Is it truly the best solution? Is it truly for the health and safety of our children? Or is it truly about control? In conclusion, the science does not support the use of masks as a preventative tool in eliminating the spread of COVID-19 among our children. I trust that you will choose to stand for everyone's health and God-given freedom.
Thank you.
Can I thank you? Can I thank you real quick? Thank you for your willingness to listen and consider the concerns of your many constituents.
Thank you. Jason McNabb.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you guys for doing the mask. I appreciate that. And thank you to all the ladies in yellow that came up here. I am a dentist. So this is a little ironic, but nothing to do with wearing masks actually causes any health issues. Okay? What does cause health issues is getting COVID. And what else causes health issues and what's bad for your teeth is getting intubated. But everything she said, the dentist said, that's not true at all. Wearing a mask, why would dentists wear a mask 8 hours a day if it's bad for your teeth? And there was a gentleman that came up here. He was saying something about his vial. I'm sorry, but some of this stuff is just absurd. It's completely absurd. He's trying to compare that. He obviously knows nothing about immunology. You're not giving a 300-pound man and a smaller person different doses of medication. It's not a medication. It's a trigger for your immune system. That dose that they give you triggers your immune system to start fighting. Okay? But these people will, take a dose of horse medication for a 1,000-pound animal. Some of this stuff is just absurd. And I'm glad you guys are following the science on this, listening to the experts. The Oldham County Board of Health they said that we are having a decline in 3 weeks straight of COVID because we're following some of the CDC guidelines. Yeah, and the gentleman with his kid in school, he is saying that this stuff is lingering on. Well, it's lingering on because people aren't following the mandates. They're not following wearing masks. They're not getting vaccinated. A quarter of the room doesn't have masks on, and you have up there right now that everybody's supposed to be masked. A quarter of them. So keep doing what you're doing. I know it's not popular, but you guys are shepherds and you're leading the flock. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McMahon.
Mrs. Fletcher, I want to thank you for composing yourself the way you have. You've gotten all kinds of stuff thrown at you, and you've taken it all on the chin, and I'm proud to have you up there.
Thank you, Dr. McNabb.
Shannon, is it Pulaski?
Say it again, Larry.
Shannon Pulaski, or, I can't,
Miss Shannon.
It's a difficult name.
Welcome.
Shana Brodsky-Pollock.
Oh,
And
okay.
I want to introduce myself as the Chief of Anatomic Pathology for a local large hospital system. My views are not representative of the hospital, so just a little disclaimer. And part of my job is to find resources for body storage. In pathology, it's pathology study of disease, we do autopsy, we do body handling, we do cancer treatments and diagnosis. Most of the medical professionals in here are very familiar with pathology, but one of my main jobs was to find a vendor to store bodies because we don't have the space. And yes, that may be a scary thought. It's my everyday life. When Delta came along, we had to find a second vendor. So I have to separate myself from what's going on in these body storage facilities because our hospitals cannot store them. We cannot store your deceased loved ones, whether they've had a heart attack or something basic like you would go into the hospital for drug overdoses. It's not just COVID, but COVID has caused us to not have space in our morgues. We have a capacity for 2 to 4 bodies, and we are at max capacity in all of our facilities. Our second vendor that I negotiated this contract with informed me the other day that he's only contracting with U of L and Norton Healthcare because that's all he can handle. So when we talk about being on the front line, I am an actual frontline hospital worker. I've been on the front line since January of 2020, which was well before the lockdown because we had to acquire these tests. And now more than ever, witnessing what's been going on, education is so important. We want these kids to become educated. We want them to stay in school. And a mask mandate, even a vaccine mandate, is necessary. It is necessary because people are not educated. They are not following recommended guidelines, and it is extremely important.
Thank you. Heather Dotson.
Dr. Radford and board members, thank you for implementing the COVID protocols, including test to stay and mask mandates. They've benefited all the students and staff in Oldham County. As of today, 49 staff and teachers have died in the state of Kentucky as a result of COVID. I don't want my colleagues, my students, or me to be a statistic. I would ask that you leave the mask mandates in place this school at least. It's one thing we can do that protects us all, and it hurts no one. Thank you.
Jack Blackwell.
Oh, there he is. Looking sharp, Jack.
Hello, my name is
Jack, can you pull the microphone down to you?
Hello, my name is Jack Blackwell, and I am a 5th grader at Camden Station. I'm also a Cub Scout, and I have a pack meeting afterwards, so that's why I'm dressed up. But I asked my mom if I was allowed to speak here, because I don't think you hear too many kids' opinions. My mom didn't really want to let me, but I really wanted to. So just to let you know, no one's making me do this. I have attended Camden Station for almost 6 years now, and I've never not wanted to get up and go to school until my 4th grade year last year. I would wake up dreading going to school because of the masks. I was constantly be threatened if my mask was ever slightly down. Once I had a classmate tell me I was going to kill everybody. We are constantly yelled at about our masks. I have been threatened by teachers and aides to have calls home to my mom or to have recess taken away from me. It has even got to the point where friends and teachers were physically touching my mask and face to make sure that my mask was on the way they wanted. I'm not a grown-up, but I'm pretty sure this is not what 4th graders should be worrying about. It made my whole 4th year and now my 5th grade year miserable. The constant threats being made fun of are not really fun at all. I have been called an idiot about having my mask down before. I have been called COVID itself, and I have been called the reason people are dying. All because of my mask were down at times for fresh air or fell below my nose. Once even a class picture was not allowed to be used because my mask was down slightly in it. I am tired of this, and so are many other kids. I would not call keeping us safe. I would not call this keeping us safe. We are ready for this to stop. This has left an uncomfortable feeling at school and a mark on my education, and just makes me feel like I'm not going to school anymore. I used to love going to my school, and I used to love going there every day, but I don't anymore.
Jack, stay with us.
Jack.
Oh, wait, go back to the podium, Jack. I just wanted to thank you for coming to speak before us. You did such a great job, and I'm sure that you are an awesome student, an awesome Boy Scout, and I would be so proud of you if I were your mom. You did an awesome job. You hang in there, buddy.
Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Teresa DeLue.
Got my mask on since this time COVID's here. It wasn't here last since June, but evidently it's here now. Can I pass these out to you?
Sure.
Guys? I got my mask on, so I'm not dangerous. They all work very well. You could pass them out.
Okay.
By the way, polio was killed 30% of the population. COVID is nowhere near killing 30% of the population, and 300 million people died of polio. So just to get that out of the way. And my son has asthma. He hasn't worn a mask once, and he never will, and he's fine. My niece had a liver transplant. My sister was going to try to isolate her. I'm like, how are you going to isolate her? Here's my poem. COVID school, which that's what we're becoming. This is all my opinion. COVID school. Dear God's children, sorry we are hurting you in so many ways. Please understand, school is a very dangerous place. Dear God's children, we have removed a very important safety net from you. See, we feel the people who love you and care for you the most are not capable of making decisions for you. We also took this right away from all adults that work or enter your school. Please understand, school is a very dangerous place. Dear God's children, even though you feel like you can't breathe with a mask covering your airways, even though you feel anxious, claustrophobic, have nosebleeds, headaches, you must leave it on. Even though you want to breathe fresh air like God intended, you can't. Please understand, school is a very dangerous place. Dear God's children, even though you want to see your friends and teachers' smiles and faces, we can't let you. Even though masks are dehumanizing and make personal connections harder, you must wear them. Please understand, school is a very dangerous place. Dear God's children, even though we are hurting you in so many ways, we must keep the fear going. Please understand, school is a very dangerous place. We must keep you safe at any cost.
Your time's up.
Then I have, please pray for our children. They need it.
Brenda Daisy.
Good evening.
Thank you all for doing this and allowing us to have an opportunity to share our opinions, a little bit about our children. I will tell you, we are a family that came from the other school district. We kept our child at the best STEAM school because her education was very important to us, so we did a lot of research. The day after her 5th grade graduation, because we had done a lot of research, we moved to the county that had the best schools for her, and that brought us here. She began 6th grade here, and then it all started to go downhill. She's in 8th grade. She's loved by her teachers and her friends. She's incredibly gifted, the brightest child you can imagine. Her education is so important to us, and we do not make our choices lightly. So please allow us to make the choice for our child. She's had COVID. Our entire family has had COVID. I would never do anything to risk her health, her safety. Please give the parents the opportunity to make the choice that is best for their children. She's getting constant nosebleeds. She never had nosebleeds before wearing a mask. Much to my surprise, she's not alone. Many of her friends, consistent nosebleeds. Have you heard this? Is this news to you? Has this been brought to your attention? Board, has this been brought to your attention? Nosebleeds are a constant problem. The children are suffering. This is not keeping them safe. This is not what the children want. We're going to follow the science. I talked to a nurse practitioner. I've talked to doctors. I can find the research that I want to find, no matter what side I'm on. And you all can find the same research. So where do we go with this? Let the parents make the choice for their children's. Please. That's what a parent's job is.
Thank you.
Julie McGee.
For me, this is not about masks or shot. I am not here every month to fight for my child not to wear a mask. I am here for our freedoms. Our freedoms are being stripped from us one thing at a time. I am here for the freedom to choose if my child or myself wears a mask, to choose medical freedom, to make that choice with my doctor as to whether the vaccine is right for myself or my child. I am here for the right to choose when my child is sick, I will keep them home. And when my child is not sick, I will send them to school. Because as a parent, that is what I do. I am tired. I am tired of this fight. I am tired of being told that someone else knows better for my child than I do. But as tired as I am, this is too important of a fight to give up. This is the time to stand up. I do not understand the agenda of our federal government. I am not sure of their end game. But it trickles down to right here, to me and you, the people I am speaking with right now. I cannot do this on my own, and neither can anyone here. We need to stand united for what is truly right. Please look at the numbers on the sheet that I just gave you. It came straight off the CDC website. Our children have a better chance of getting injured or killed in a car accident than they do of getting COVID or dying from COVID. But yet we still put them in our cars and on our buses every day. Again, I don't know our federal government's agenda, but they have kept this pandemic alive. They have fueled it with fear to continue to have control, and we have allowed it.
Ms. McGee, your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGee.
I will send I will send the rest of this to you all in an email. and
Sure.
I'd appreciate a response.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Bridget Ely?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Last night, I found what I believe is really a smoking gun on the internet, and it was an NIH study released in April of this year, and it was a composite of a bunch of studies done by MDs, and it says that masks are extremely dangerous, and it says that they don't work. One of the quotes was, in a meta-analysis of evidence commissioned by the WHO, no effects of masks in the context of influenza virus pandemic prevention could be demonstrated. Another quote was, neither surgical nor N95 masks establish reliable protection against corona and influenza viruses. Now, this is published on the NIH website, okay? So, and these are real doctors, MDs, okay, doing this study. And here's what the masks, including cloth masks, did do in these studies. The studies established an, quote, indisputable connection to significant increase in carbon dioxide, 30-fold increase in carbon dioxide after only a few minutes, a decrease in oxygen in our children's blood, increase in blood pressure, increase in heart rate, reduced motor skills and cognitive abilities. Your body knows it's being attacked, suffocated and poisoned, basically, so you have a constant release of stress hormones. Long-term damage can include high blood pressure, cardiac dysfunction, and damage to blood vessels supplying the brain. Now, we know that the masks are basically greenhouses for bacteria, fungus, and yeast, especially E. coli bacteria. They found that in over 50% of the cases. That this is, quote, masks can cause clinically relevant bacterial or viral infections. Exhaled air contains over 250 toxic and irritating substances. Masks act like, this is the killer, masks act like nebulizers and spray out 384% more fine particles than people just speaking.
Ma'am, your
and these
time's up.
particles are smaller.
Time's up.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. McGee.
Gina Dunaway?
Good afternoon.
It's Jenna Dunaway.
Jenna, okay.
That's okay.
I was close.
You was, most people are. Okay, first of all, my question for you all is, this has been going on for over a year and a half. COVID is a virus. It's just like the flu. It's not going anywhere. Are you going to mask our children forever? Are we? Now, I work in a very public setting where everyone goes to get their daily needs, their household needs. How many people in this room that are so for masks come out in the public wearing masks? Because I can tell you right now, in a public setting where I'm at, they're not. I see them. I see them every day. So if you all can go to the grocery store and you can go out to dinner or any other place not wearing a mask, why do our kids have to wear one? They're not vaccinated. Where's the study on the vaccination? And you two ladies right here need to stop. No, they're being very disrespectful. They have sat there and laughed and made comments, and I've heard every single thing that those two rude ladies have said.
Okay, Ms. Dunaway.
They need to stop.
Address us, okay?
I am. But here's the thing. Hang on. Olivia.
Wait, no.
Hang on.
No,
Olivia.
Jenna.
Olivia. Can I please get my daughter up here? Olivia.
Sure time.
Another thing while she's walking up here, my son is very good. I'm going to get a little emotional because he should not be getting reprimanded for not wearing a stupid mask. He's never been in trouble. Until now,
Ladies
he
and
gets
gentlemen,
migraines, he gets nosebleeds, he can't breathe, he hates going to school because he doesn't want to wear this. She's been in school for 2 years. Ask her how she likes it. It's a fight. She didn't like NTI, and she doesn't like wearing a mask. Here, you want to ask her, do you like wearing a mask?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Dunaway.
It's been horrible.
Your time's up.
Let us make our choice for our children. Let our children make their choice.
ma'am, your
If
time's
they want
up.
to wear their mask, then they can.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Mike Duncan.
Welcome, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Superintendent and board members. And thank you for the time. Thank you for upholding the mandate for masks. If I can speak as a father of 4 students in Oldham County schools through elementary through high school, I think it's important to understand when there's a fire in the house, no matter how big, it's not a good idea to take the water away or to take the lid away if it's an oil fire, grease fire, whatever the case is. A few comments on some of the words that I've heard so far from others. And by the way, I think if everyone can take a deep breath, it might help since there are a lot of tensions in the room. But the Israeli study that was just referenced had been retracted. It was not peer-reviewed. It was a medical hypothesis retracted at the request of the editor-in-chief. It will say so if you look it up on the NIH website. In addition, I'm also what some would consider pro-choice when it comes to being a parent. And in this case, if the choice is between my children going to school without a mask and Cassidy cannot, or it puts her at greater risk for something that she has no control over, I will gladly mask up my children because that is the responsible and moral thing to do to protect each other. If those of you like to go to a house of worship on Sunday mornings, you might be good to remember that one of the things that Jesus said was to love thy neighbor. And that is when, and what I think of when I think of masking up to protect each other. It's a sign of respect that we can show to each other. No matter how you feel about it, if it comes down to someone else who doesn't have the choices that we do being healthier, I'm sorry, it's not a question, it's not a choice, it's just the right decision to make, it's the responsible decision to make.
Your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
This is the last speaker, Justin Phillips.
Welcome, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Justin Phillips. I'm a medical doctor practicing in Louisville. I just wanted to support the universal masking to continue currently. I'm not an infectious disease expert or a pulmonologist. I'm a neurologist, but I have training in consuming medical literature and getting the data from that. The data supports that masks are effective in reducing the transmission of the virus. The data supports that masks are safe. They don't cause reduction of oxygen. They don't cause increased CO2. They are safe and effective. And in regards to how this affects our rights, there are a number of things that in the public interest take away some of our rights to do whatever we want. We wear seatbelts and we're compelled to do so now. We can't drive over the speed limit because of risks. We can't litter. There are sanitation requirements. So these are things that are acceptable things that are done on behalf of the community as a whole as part of a social contract. So I support continuing universal masking as long as the experts and the data support that it's helpful for keeping our kids safe and in school. Thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our last speaker, and thank y'all for the way y'all handled this and the shortness in time, but with this many people, we've been here half the night, so we based it on a number of people. I'm going to turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I know that all of you shared heartfelt concerns. And as the board navigates these waters day after day after day with the superintendent, our school administrators, our central office administrators, we do consider all of the input that we receive, not just from the data, but from our community. And so we value this opportunity to hear from you. And I think in the beginning, what Mr. Dodson said is absolutely correct. We are all here for the same reason. We all respect and appreciate your children and our children. And so I do thank you for all being here this evening. We are going to proceed with our agenda. We have a few action items. You're welcome to stay. I know some of you are under time constraints, so I can give you an opportunity to leave if you need to, but we'll proceed with the rest of our agenda.
Hey, Joyce, how long do we have still?
What?
Like, we've been here for 2 hours. Can we take a 5-minute break, or like, how much longer do we have?
The smallest bladder.
I had 4 children.
Oh.
I'm just asking.
All right. We do have quite a bit more of an agenda, so I'm going to give everybody a 5-minute break. And thank you for letting us do that.
Thank you.
Joyce.
Okay.
we're going to resume our board meeting. If you would allow us to. All right, I just saw Steve Greenwell. Magistrate Greenwell, welcome. Action item I, sir.
Yes, so I'd like to circle back to what we talked about earlier in superintendent report, our collaboration and partners with local health officials. If you recall earlier, we talked about we've been working with our state public health officials, our Oldham County health professionals, and recently I've been collaborating with U of L and Norton's, which consists of pediatricians, infectious disease, critical care, and epidemiologists to help guide our pathway forward. So I'd like to make a recommendation to the board that is aligned to how we are operating school and a reopening plan. My recommendation is continue to use all our mitigation strategies for the next 3 weeks. This will be reevaluated at the October 25th board meeting, which does include our current masking requirements, test to stay, our quarantine of close contacts, and other mitigation strategies outlined in our plan, which has been and will continue to be posted on our website. One note I would make for the board is our fall break is later than most school districts, and not that that really matters, but it is about 3 weeks away, if I've got my math correct. But fall break travel could have an impact on the October 25th recommendation, which means how our incident rate and all of our data across our county and our region in terms of what's happening in our hospitals, the recommendations from our healthcare professionals. We'll continue to work with our partners during that time to make informed decisions moving forward. So as we've heard tonight, no one wants to wear masks or continue to do that, but how we move forward and make decisions will come through our collaboration, working together to outline that for our community. So that is my recommendation for our reopening plan, and also in your packet is our test to stay, which has shown such good success.
Thank you, Superintendent. Let me ask board members if they have any questions or comments. So hearing none, Dr. Radford, what is your recommendation again?
Recommendation is to continue with our mask requirement and revisit that policy and our plan at the October 25th board meeting.
Thank you, sir. Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor? And that would be 5-0. Thank you, sir. We are now ready for action item J. Superintendent.
Yeah, make a recommendation to approve the FY21 working budget.
So we have seen this information, board members. Do you have any additional questions or comments? If so, Ms. Anderson is with us. All right, so your recommendation, sir?
Yeah, recommendation to approve.
Motion to approve, please. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's, Patrick, did you vote? 5-0. Thank you. Sorry. Action item K, sir.
Yes, in your board packet, you'll see a PGP and 306090 as required for state superintendent training for the board to consider.
Yes. So we have your report in front of us with your 30, 60, 90-day plan. Many of these items you have accomplished already. And we also have your demonstrators, again, indicated for us under the 7 standards, which will guide the work in the district, but also guide the evaluation. Any questions for the superintendent? So your recommendation, sir?
Recommend to approve.
Motion to approve, made by Ms. Nykirk, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you. We are ready for action item L, sir.
Yes, you'll see in your information the student hardship requests for early graduation.
Yes. We have that information. Do you all, board members, have any questions or comments? Your recommendation, sir.
Recommend to approve.
Motion to approve, please, made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you, everybody. We are ready for action item M, sir.
Yes, as the board heard earlier tonight, the substitute teacher incentive program for review and consideration.
Yes. Would you summarize that again, Superintendent?
Yes, so substitutes, basically it is a mitigation strategy to help increase the number of subs that would be available to fill open substitute positions. For current subs and potentially new subs, that if they worked 10 days, they would get an increased rate based upon their rank and experience to help really attract subs to be able to help in our classrooms and needs that we have within the buildings.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? So your recommendation again.
Recommend to approve.
Motion to approve made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Ms. Nykirk. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. And one more action item N, sir.
Yes, consideration for policy revision for FY22.
All right. We have seen these policies before. Any questions or comments at this time, board members? Hearing none, your recommendation?
Recommend to approve.
Motion to approve, please, made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Board members, we have 2 information items at the conclusion of our agenda. The monthly district energy usage, you will find that report there now, and the monthly preschool report. Please take time to review those. And at this time, we need to go into executive session. We need to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C to discuss the following matters: 3 litigation matters pertaining to student injuries, 1 special education matter, and an employment claims matter. The board needs to go into executive session pursuant to this KRS to discuss litigation preparation, the public disclosure of which would jeopardize the board's position. May I have a motion to go into executive session made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. We will recess while the board goes to executive session. Thank you, everybody.